Welcome to In Conversation With. Join me, Danny Jarvis, as I sit down with guest DJs, promoters, record labels, content makers, and anyone making moves on the underground house music scene. There's plenty of nostalgia, but there's also some key insights as to where the underground scene is today. So if you like what you hear, please hit the follow or subscribe button and leave us a review. Wherever you will listen to your podcasts, at the gym, in the car, or chilled at home, relax and enjoy In Conversation With. Mike, thank you very much for coming up to see me up here at Bowesville, our house. We met a couple of weeks ago and I asked you if you'd come on the show and you gladly said yes, which was really good, and I was over the moon. So for the purpose of our listeners, take your time, introduce yourself and tell us what you're about.
Okay, so yeah, thanks very much for having us on, Danny. I really appreciate the invite. It's a big honour, actually, to be invited by someone like yourself onto something like this, because I've followed, obviously, what you've been doing for years, and I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago. We officially met in the toilets.
Oh, no. Wow, what a romantic story.
No, not on the dance floor, unfortunately. But yeah, so I'm Mike Dixon. My stage name's Naughty Bear. We'll probably get into that later if you want, but yeah. Can't change it now, I'm afraid. I'm down the line. So yeah, it came about drunken nights, party animal nights, and I think that's where the name came from. But I'll go into more of that later on if you want. But
yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm DJ, producer, and now promoter. Just over a year promoting my night. I kind of just call it like a party because I don't want to put any pressure on myself really. So I would say like it's more about just bringing people together, sharing the love of music and trying to just have a good time basically, and that's kind of the roots of Flow, and it come about. I actually asked permission. I sort of thought like, okay, well, who's my other main competitors? I mean maybe I shouldn't put it like that, but you're a brand in town, I suppose. You know, NASA and Alan especially, I know them quite well, and yeah, both of them said we haven't got any plans. There was nothing in the diary, so I'd thought about putting on my own night for some time. So I thought, okay, let's do it.
And I think that's the responsible thing to do. It's not a massive scene, and you've got to kind of work together. And I remember you reaching out actually, and you know, talking about dates. And I think that's the difficult thing when you're planning dates. You need to do a party first to see if it works, and then you'll get other dates. So sometimes it can be quite difficult. But if somebody's more established and they've got their dates run out, it totally makes sense to just DM somebody and just do the right thing. And
yeah, definitely, I completely agree.
So that's where it started. Where did your love of music start? What was your first memory of hearing this sort of music and saying, I'm not just going to listen to it, I'm going to do something about this?
Yeah, I think I've got two sort of stories for you. I believe it was 2003, Gatecrasher.
Okay.
I looked it up today, and I'm sure it was Liverpool, but it was saying it was on Google. It was Birmingham. So I know totally different cities. So someone's probably going, "No, you idiot! It was there." Or probably someone's going at Manchester actually, but I can't remember. I was a bus full of lads, and yeah, they were all into stuff that we all know and enjoy. Some of us. And I just went for the party, and
right.
I was dancing for 12 hours straight to this hard house music by Lisa Lashes, Tidy Boys, Yoji Bayamonica. Do you know the guy?
No.
Japanese DJ, look at him.
Right.
Absolute mental. Like when I look back now and I think that guy is nuts. Like I love him. He was fantastic. Nowadays, I enjoy techno, but I probably don't go that hard in terms of the BPM and stuff, and the kind of, I would say there's a lot more melody and rhythm and
yeah.
stuff like
that. It's quite a broad genre, techno, isn't it? It often just gets pigeonholed as being really banging, or whoever's like popular at the time, you know, drum code. Oh, that's techno. No, there's a whole whole soundscape of it.
It's huge, isn't it? Absolutely huge. So there's so many subgenres, isn't there now? But yeah, that was where it kind of started, and then I can't remember if it was before or after then, but we I had a couple of older mates. I was only 17 at the time, and they opened the Fire Exit, a foundation. and I snuck in the back of Foundation. I don't know if anyone ever did that at Foundation, but that was a little trick that we
Yeah.
used to do for some of us that couldn't get in.
I mean, Nancy that does the door at our
Yeah.
place. If she listens to this, she might try and charge you for the fee that you never paid.
I know, I shouldn't really admit these secrets, should I really?
No, this is what it's all about. These stories, sneaking into clubs is definite.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it started, and yeah, although I lost track with those mates, and I suppose my musical journey changed a bit after that, just because I was more into it for the music, and I think some of the other people were into it for other reasons.
Yeah, I was talking about this today with Elliot up in Scotland. He's been in the group that we've been involved with, the Super Progressive, and we were talking about suddenly you don't just want to go clubbing and see a DJ. You just have to know. You have to know more about the music. You have to know, like, what is this? What are they doing? What's going on? How has this night been put on? Who are these DJs they're booking? Where do I find this music? It changes from just being there and enjoying the party to delving deeper.
Absolutely, yeah. It brings people together, and I think obviously some people are coming who are more into it than others, which is absolutely fine, because I think that's a good thing anyway. You've always got those mates who just come for the good time and they don't really go beyond that. And then you've got kind of the obsessives who go track IDing all night, and I've done that with your sets. I've been like, what is that track? I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, can't find it, do me head in, Shazamming it, no, it's just not happening. And I'm like, I'm not going to message him, I will find it. And it's kind of that, like, just, I don't know what it is, but when you find that track that really ignites something inside you, like, you will go to the hill searching for it. You know?
Yeah, that's it. It's special, and that's like testament to the artists that spend their time making these tracks, is that, you know, particularly these days with all the millions of tracks there are, that you've got to find a way of finding music and playing music to people that they can't find. And, you know, back in the day, same thing for me, you'd either peer across the DJ's turntables to see if you could sneak a look at it. Often it was white label. But this is another thing I was telling Elliot today is, you know, I used to remember the track. I would remember the track. I would remember how the beat structure went, and then I would go and try and explain it or look at what would be a similar sound and try and find it that way.
Yeah.
Because similarly, I was just obsessed with thinking, well, what is this track? The DJs I was seeing, you know, were blowing my mind. You could go and you could see one style, but you could pretty much guess what that tune was, or it was formulaic. And then there was other DJs that were just playing stuff in a back room, you know, in a dark back room in Cream, and you're thinking, what is this?
Yeah.
It's like being on another world.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's where it all started, I think. And although I had a passion for it early on, I think because I changed sort of friendship circles a bit, I got into other genres and obsessed about other genres of music that ignited something different inside us.
What were they?
So punk rock.
Oh, nice. Okay, great.
I was a huge punk rock, rockabilly, psychobilly fan for quite a long time. Still listen to it now and then. Some metal as well, but yeah, I enjoyed that, and I had sort of those kind of mates, and I just always liked something that was different. I never used to go with the mainstream. I've never really cared about that. You know, I've never really cared, even if Sasha had a number one, it wouldn't bother us in that sense, if that makes sense. Like, I just love Sasha no matter what, but like, I go for like the art, you know, the art and the message. And sometimes the message is what I loved about electronic music was, when I got back into it, was the fact there wasn't lyrics. So I'd spent a lot of time listening to quite politically charged lyrics, and then I went into a situation where I got back into clubbing, and then it all changed again.
What age were you then when you got back into clubbing?
So a friend of mine, I was going to come on to it later, but we'll talk about it now. But yeah, a friend of mine invited me to go and see Sasha. I'd never seen him at Mint in Leeds. I think it was 2013, 14, so it wasn't that long ago, really. It might have been a little bit sooner than then. And yeah, it was just like, I don't know what it was. There was just something spiritual about that night, and I honestly mean that. Like, it just touched a chord and a nerve that I can never forget that night. And it was just the way he played, the audience, the coming together, everybody, just a whole number of things really, and it never left us.
You experienced the Sasha magic, didn't you?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, don't get me wrong, there is the odd set where you just doesn't click with you.
No, I agree.
But then is most of the stuff that I've been listening to, like which then led me on to like Last Night on Earth, all of the mixes. I listened to every single one of them religiously and learned everything about like how did he do that or how did he do this, what did he do there, and he doesn't always give his secrets away as well, does he? So sometimes some of the secrets I've then learned from other DJs who've told me like that's how he did that, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Like to think that that's all he did, but sometimes it's like that, isn't it?
Yeah, we share that passion. You know, I don't think anybody who's into progressive house, let's just give it that blank sort of overall sort of name, although he plays every genre, that style, let's say, of progressive music, you know, when you are bewitched by Sasha, there is nobody greater. And, you know, his ability very early on to mix records, you know, in key in a way that was just so sewn together that you could barely tell when one started and when one stopped. But then he could also thrash them out and he could then glide you through like moments of bliss. Mm-hmm. Everybody has, I think, at least one like standout Sasha gig that changes how they feel.
Yeah.
It's funny actually because it was about 2018, I think, when I saw him at Mint. Right. Same thing. I'd sort of fallen out of love with him a little bit. I'm a massive Guy J and Hanan fan.
Yeah.
And the night he played at Mint was just another level. And it reminded me of that first time I fell in love with him when I was 17.
So do you think certain clubs bring out certain DJs? Do you believe in that?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's difficult to know. I mean, traditionally, when a DJ plays at a club might be known for a type of style. You know, some clubs very early on would just book any massive DJ, and very much in the beginning of the scene when I was in it, you heard a bit of everything. You know, a DJ could follow on that played a completely different type of music. The good places tried not to do that. If they had more than one room, they would probably like split the rooms up a bit, and you would get the styles so they weren't clashing. Mm-hmm. But essentially, yeah, clubs would book DJs. DJs would maybe want to play clubs that had a certain sound. And that was probably led by the residents, of course. If the residents had a certain style, then a headliner would come and amplify that. I mean, Sasha said there's certain places that he does love to play. I think that club has always been somewhere that people have really gone and made the effort to go and see him. I mean, there was only probably about 300-400 people there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big crowd, you know, and that doesn't matter if you encapsulate everyone.
I actually personally, just from someone who's, you know, most people probably have, but especially the younger listeners maybe haven't, but smaller venues for me at the moment do it for me more than the big venues and the big festivals, I'll be honest.
That's how it started, Mike.
Yeah.
You know, it really did start by, you mentioned it earlier, it started by parties, right? Yeah. It's called house music. Yeah. There were house parties.
Absolutely.
And you know, even NASA started off with house parties before he took progress on to be something more.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's totally understandable that you'd think that. So just thinking back to some of the things you said there, this music, right, it's totally taken your imagination and everything else. Is there any musical ability in you? Did you learn music? Was your father obsessed with it? Was your brother? Any relations?
Yeah, I think it's always been in the family. I don't think electronic music had really hit the family like it hit me, really. My middle brother, I've got two brothers. My middle brother was quite into electronic music, more like trance early on as well. And he's only, you know, a couple of years younger than me, really. So we both had that interest early on, and we used to listen to like Dave Pearce on Radio 1 before we could go out, you know, around the 2000s. And like, I don't know if people remember that period, but it was quite a party period, wasn't it? Like,
yeah,
we were looking at that going, we cannot wait for this, you know, like to get out there and see the world. And this music was carrying that like adrenaline in young people at the time, I think. And it was really inspiring, actually. And we bought it, I mean, it was just after tapes. So we were buying CDs. I never really got into the vinyl thing. I love the idea of vinyl. I've never DJed with vinyl either, so some of the DJs will be going on, I know. But it's just never been.
No, you've just saved yourself hours and hours stood on your own.
Yeah.
With the same two pieces of vinyl just going over and over it.
Yeah, I think it's always been in the family. My dad had quite eclectic tastes. You know, he loved everything from Billy Joel right through like Motorhead, and then some of my mum's tastes were more like disco, I suppose, early disco and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's always on. You know, like a lot of young people say, like, you know, music was always on in the house and
Yeah.
MTV and all of that.
It,
And
it affects you more than you think. You know, it
absolutely, yeah.
influences what you go on to listen to, and I think some things you might not immediately like understand or particularly enjoy, but because, like you say, you're used to it in the house, it spurs you on to think of something else. Like there'll always be a CD. I believe this. There'll always be a track on any album that will interest you more than the other tracks if you gave the whole thing a listen. You might not like them all, but with one, and you'll go, ooh, and that will sort of spur off, and it will make you go and look for something else. And I think that's what it is. It's almost like this never-ending search. Like any DJ knows, they're always looking for the perfect tune,
absolutely, yeah.
the most amazing tune.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't, and I think I've started as a DJ in like since Flow, really, like almost like being a resident of Flow, trying to create feelings, and I think you probably know what I mean by that. Rather than like playing big records, trying to create feelings and moods, and I'm quite inspired by that kind of Guy J kind of feel that he gets in his sets, for example. I wouldn't say I play as slow as that personally for me, but yeah, I would say like trying to create that mood on the dance floor. It's not always about those big moments, is it? Sometimes it's a build, sometimes it's just the atmosphere itself, you know, getting lost in the beats, you know, as well. For me, when I think obviously I mentioned the Sasha gig. Why it stuck with us is because I did for 5 or 6 hours. I got completely lost and I lost track of time, and I'd never really felt like that before. Even though I'd been a music lover, never really felt like that before. And I think the difference with electronic music for me personally is with the punk and everything else I was into, it was very like, you know, aggressive, political. You had to have a message. It was this. There was so many for a genre that's meant to be anti-establishment. There was so many rules, and I think what electronic music brought out in us was this hedonism.
Yeah, it doesn't really have an agenda, does it?
Yeah.
It's more about, and I think people have lost this in modern day, it's more about being a free spirit, looking around the dance floor, and you haven't got a clue whether that guy's going to wear a suit on Monday, put the bins out, or like wash your car, or like be a hedge fund manager. And that's the beauty, is that you're not supposed to have to worry about those things while somebody's playing music, and you don't care.
And it's there's something tribal about it, isn't it? I think one of your last guests said something similar about it goes back so far, doesn't it? Beats and rhythm. We've been doing it since the dawn of mankind.
Yeah, absolutely, really? Yeah.
So it's so, I think if it connects with you on one level, it can go so much deeper, you know. And I think that's kind of where it kind of really began for us, was that gig, you know. And that's kind of it's resulted in me doing what I'm doing now, to kind of for many reasons, really. I think one of the main reasons was, I think a lot of DJs will say this as well, is I couldn't get enough gigs. You know, I wasn't getting a chance to play the music that I actually love. You know, and some people will know that I do a bit of mobile DJing, for example. And to be honest with you, I'm not like a huge fan of the music I'm playing, which is kind of really contrary to what I'm about as a person. So yeah, it's.
So what's that? Is that a need for money? Do you need to earn money, and you want to support yourself with your other passion?
Yeah, it's somewhat financial. Yeah, I would say. In the beginning, it was just enjoyed entertaining people, and then I quickly realised that a lot of the audiences and clients don't really care about you. I know it sounds horrible, but they don't really. You do get really good clients and guests and stuff who you have a great night with, and then at the end of the night they really thank you, and like, it's not always about the money. It's just about the respect of the fact that they've enjoyed it and you've entertained them, and that kind of relationship. But yeah, I think I've been doing it a while, and I'll still do it for a little while yet. But I think it's so I can support myself to do my own music. You know.
I mean, it's I don't scoff at it. You know, throughout the many years that I've either been involved in like entertainment or hospitality, you know, there's an important job to do for people to turn up, whether it's at a wedding, you know, play songs people want to hear. You know, generally, like you say, it's a tribal thing. If you're playing at a wedding, you've got all the most important guests there. People just want to lose themselves, have the time of their life, and they want to sing along or dance along to music they've heard 100 times. They do. It's like it's quite normal. He's still using the same tools. He's still using the same thought processes of making people dance, or they've danced too much and I need to chill them out. So there's a lot to learn from that. Yeah. I mean, I used to put playlists together. But, you know, for all the venues that I've ever worked for, I would end up putting playlists together.
Yeah,
it's a similar thing.
Actually, that's probably where it started, because I suppose I wanted to make more friends when I first began. But in school, in sixth form, I used to bring in playlists on CDs and then beg the teachers at dinner time, can I play the tracks in the Wickham Comprehensive, is where I went to school.
See, this is the stuff I like digging out, because if you don't have these conversations, how does this stuff ever come out? Because people always start, like you kind of did, and anybody does, they start in the middle of a story, because that's where they're at the moment. There's a real set of stepping stones that get you to where you are, and it's those little moments. Daft things, like I used to sell rave tapes. I used to copy rave tapes onto blank tapes and sell them on. Now, you could say that was a good way of earning pocket money, but it's more than that, wasn't it? I'm trying to share music with people, and I'm also trying to preserve the quality of the original tapes that I'm taping by buying them blank cassettes, because when you got a tape of a tape of a tape of a tape, it sounded awful. And when I think back to that, that's one of the reasons why I'm absolutely obsessed with the quality of tracks. Similarly, the music my household had was Queen, whose production was unbelievable.
Absolutely.
So your ears, your brain, the way you think, sometimes, it's to earn money, but there's always a science behind the sort of the methods you're going through.
Yeah, and it comes from somewhere, doesn't it? I think it comes from, early on, a sort of urge to entertain. You know, and I remember that common room quite well, and I was trying to entertain people in every kind of way, like doing dumb things in the common room and stuff like that. But it was always like, oh, Dixon, have you got a mixtape for us? Like, you know, and I had stuff on there sometimes that I didn't even like, just because someone asked me to put one on.
But you were the go-to man.
Yeah, I was the go-to man, and there was, I think there was one or two others, and then I would compare, because I'm like, well, where did you get that track from? And it wasn't always dance. There was some, like, at the time, like, indie was really kicking off, like White Stripes, that track, you know, their big track had just come out and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a legacy to it, I suppose, when you look at it that way, that I've always kind of had like a little toe in it, you know.
Yeah, I think the more musical influences you've got, the better. I mean, it's very difficult when sometimes you can have a sound in your head that you want to hear, and you can go out and you can try and find that music. I think that's probably what most, you know, DJs I think would say, is that they hear something, they like that sound, and they probably want to find something that goes with it. You know, there aren't many DJs these days that would completely clash, not just genres, but styles together. You know, you have to be extremely, like, have extreme technical ability to do that.
Yeah.
Who's the guy that we watched, Emma and I went to see The Prodigy about 2 years ago, and they had a DJ warming up. I can't remember what he's called. He's got a Radio 1 show. I can't remember his name. He must have been boiling. He wore a full, like, balaclava.
Really?
And was like, must have been sweating his tits off.
Yeah.
He was absolutely unbelievable. The tunes he could drop. And I said to Emma, that's proper DJing. To be able to take a Billy Joel song and then put drum and bass over the top of it, and then mix in all these different elements, all these different styles properly. He was so entertaining. I bet his name comes at the end of the interview, and if it does, I'll be over the moon. But that's the point you're making. DJing is not, in a way, it's not cool. In a way, it shouldn't be cool. It should be a weird, obsessive, strange amalgamation of being able to put things together in your head and then play them.
Well, I think what inspires you about DJs is, and when you fall in love with a DJ, is like you look past who they are. So if you look, I don't mean any disrespect to Sasha, but if you look at him on the surface, you think, oh, he seems quite boring actually. But if you look past the obvious, I think you'll find there's a world of wonder there, isn't there? Yeah. There's a world of wonder there, and I think he's got such an amazing brain, like his musical background, how he learned music, you know, how he got into it, the whole story around it. And
he's very coy about talking about it. You know, when you go looking for interviews on YouTube and things like that, and I've done quite a bit of that because I used to sample bits of his voice. And then when I've done like retro, or I've tried to recreate mixes that he's done, I've taken interviews with him talking, or people talking about him. And he was always very shy of the fame. You know, he couldn't quite work out why he was revered and other people weren't. And he blames Don Phillips mainly for sort of calling him Sasha the son of God.
Yeah.
But there is always somebody in every generation that's at the right place at the right time. And, you know, his ability to play records, and that's all he wanted to do, was something that has remained his career. But then, like you said, he had some musical training. But you take, for example, all the live stuff that he did.
Yeah.
He then went and learned how to play different instruments, like you say, with this massive brain of music, who's always tried to push the forefront. And he's always quite happily married, sometimes quite commercial or on the edge of commercial voices. You know, he remixed Madonna. He'd remixed loads of stuff prior to that. And over the latter years has kind of got this more indie sort of sound to him, London Grammar, all this kind of stuff. There's something in him that drives him to want to hear new stuff. The incredible thing is, like him and somebody like Digweed and Hanan, these guys are they're in the late 50s.
Yeah, I know.
Their story would be no different than yours in terms of where they grapple together these bits of influences or where they went out. You know, Sasha always says, you know, he went to the Hacienda and just was like, that's it, I've got to be there.
Yeah.
But he moved in with somebody who was the resident there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there's things that happen in life that, I don't know, the heritage, the mythology of the music we're into, and then we do have these gods, and I'm glad we have them. There's a lot of pressure, I think, on people, and there has been in the last 10 years in our style of music, that if you're going to be successful, you have to be a producer. It's like, what?
Yeah.
How does that work? Why?
Yeah, it's a very strange one, isn't it, now? And I think I've come at a time, really, I got into DJing probably about 10 years ago, actually. I had a love for it for a long time, but I never thought I would be able to do it, first of all. I never had the confidence. I was too busy partying. And then it slowly developed. I bought a tractor, I think Mark II, is it, or something like that, just a controller. Fell in love with just that, just messing around in the house, like I suppose everyone does, playing in front of one or two people, you know, house parties. Then I got the Pioneer controller, and around that period I was making records as well, so I was doing kind of both side by side. But at that time it was the start of the producer era, where the producers were getting, you know, it was that kind of thing where it was producer first, DJ second. I think in the last couple of years it has started to change a little bit. I hate to say it, I know a lot of people diss on TikTok and they don't like it, and I totally understand that. There's a lot of negatives, but you are seeing some quite talented people come through TikTok as well. Yes, it's quite quick, and it's so against like progressive house and a lot of the genres we love in some ways. But if you're 18 years old and you've never heard of progressive house and you come across it on TikTok and then you go away and listen to a mix, is that such a bad thing? I think people come across the music in different ways, and people get to different music in different ways, don't they? And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's on their own journey, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
How somebody comes across your music, you can't blame music for the medium that they hear it on. What anybody wants to do, and I've said this before on previous podcasts, so I hope I don't annoy anybody by repeating it, but if you make a song, whether you're a band, a single artist, a DJ, or whatever, your real want from that is for as many people to like what you like and have made as possible.
Yeah.
Now, that is very different than trying to create something that you hope millions of people will like so you become famous. That is the antithesis, in my view, to being an artist.
Yeah.
But what has changed massively in the last probably 15 years especially is the medium at which you can be found. We're not going to talk about the quality of whatever people are doing it, because, you know, influencers, all these different people, if they're reaching huge amounts of people and huge amounts of people like it, there has to be some value in that music, whether you personally like it or not. So I don't blame these platforms, and certainly if new people fall into the styles of music you like and are passionate about because they found it on a medium that you might not use, That's, in my way, that's great.
Mhm.
The only thing that changes for that is that it's very different, isn't it? Seeing and hearing something on the social media platform than being in the middle of a dance floor with real humans
Absolutely,
and,
yeah.
and experiencing it, which is what you said earlier about feeling it.
Yeah, and I think obviously, if you think about COVID as a sort of a reset for a lot of things in life in general, I think it changed so much. And Jeff Manpower,
Yep.
he talks about this a lot. So I don't want to repeat exactly what he said, but we're inspired by a lot of what he says at the moment in terms of, all those younger people going out or would go out, meet people, meet older people, mix, learn about the sort of nightlife and the fact that you can make friends for life on the dance floor. You can have the best time of your life, and all of that. They were getting that through something they were scrolling and like that little dopamine hit when you scroll. And I think people had to get the music out some way, so I don't blame people. But there are a lot of negatives for TikTok, and if you look at like suicides and things like that, not to get depressing on the podcast, but there are a lot of negatives to TikTok and the likes and the follows and all of that. And I think what I've tried to do with Flow since then is look past that and look to what it was all about in the beginning. And like from beginning Flow, I had an idea of like what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can put on a night first. And the first one, or just mainly my friends come in, and then I think we just let people in free halfway through the night. Yeah, so I think as we were growing the night and we learned a lot from the first one, I realised I could do it. I could put a night on and people would come, and I think it kind of broke that taboo in my head and that kind of imposter syndrome that I've always had, really, and I suppose confidence as well. That okay, it wasn't the biggest night we've ever put on, but this has potential, and it could actually go somewhere and do something. And I had Yeadon on as headliner. He played a fantastic set.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he?
Great DJ. I think we both played one track similar, I believe one of Denny's tracks. But that's absolutely fine. It happens. It happens.
It does happen.
It does happen. And then I had Joe Kidham on, who's changed his name to Kidham, who's fantastic as well. A really up and coming DJ who, again, I really admire. And because he's so into it, he's a little bit younger than us, I think, and he's so into it for the music as well, and you can see that he doesn't just go with trends, he goes because he has a passion for it, and he's not a million miles away from like what we're all about, and I think that's good, to be a little bit different is needed, isn't it? So what I liked about doing it early on actually was after the first night, there was loads of stuff in the press saying, no one's going out anymore. This was last year when the cost of living was really biting as well. You probably know that from some of your nights. But what we learned quite quickly is it's rubbish. Like I know obviously people have only got so much money and some people can't always afford to go out. There is some truth in that. Don't get me wrong, in terms of the economy and all of that. But in terms of putting on a night, I actually listened to a guy, Phil from Digital DJ Tips, I believe, on YouTube, and I learned from him actually from one of his YouTubes saying that they started their night when it was a recession and it grew and grew in a recession. And I think what I'm trying to say is like there's going to be lots of if you start your own night or you want to do it, it's going to be lots of negatives. There's going to be an excuse not to do it. There's going to be an excuse not to go for it. But if it's really in you to deliver something and do something for your town and showcase this music that's probably a million miles away from what's on trend at the moment. The hard, really fast techno is on trend, and it's kind of gone away from the tech house, which was on trend.
Well, it was melodic techno for 2 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everything was melodic techno, which was just like the same sounds, same noises, afterlife.
Yeah.
Videos of big robots dangling from the ceiling. It was like yawn.
Yeah, I know.
And there'll always be trends, won't there? And there'll always be trend chasers.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that can whip people up. I mean, progressive house was a trend at the start. Don't forget. Mm-hmm. It came about and it was totally different. I think it's probably that I think Dave Seaman said, and I shared today on Progressive House UK actually a little story that was in Decoded magazine, and it talks about the origins of Progressive House. And Dave Seaman's quoted as sort of saying, at one point, Progressive House just shot itself in the foot because it became really similar, so serious, and just not what it was all about.
Mm-hmm. Almost
So
like,
I think,
like a business.
Yeah, and then there was UK Garage, then there was Trance, then there was Tribal for a while, then there was in the mid-noughties Electro. So there's always a trend, and that happens in any style of music. Think about modern pop music. How many male singers now sound like Rag and Bone Man?
Yeah.
How many types of styles of music sound exactly the same?
Mm-hmm.
Because when something gets trendy and commercial and can make money,
Mm-hmm.
you repeat the formula.
Yeah.
The real underground does the absolute opposite.
And I think sometimes it's a blurry line, I'll be honest. I mean, obviously on my flyers I do put melodic techno, and I think what maybe some people think, I've already had DJs send mixes, and I would like, yeah, I don't like to disrespect anyone in the scene or mention names. I'm just not that type of person. But basically, some of the mixes are just very orchestrated and almost like theoretical, with like a theatre kind of performance, which is fine, and I think there's a place for that. But it wouldn't fit with flow and my and kind of the party that we have really. I think there's different types of melodic techno, there's different types of progressive house, there's different types of techno. We touched on it, and I think the lines do get blurry, and I would hate to pigeonhole myself into just one small category. Even progressive house, as people know, is huge genre, different styles, different tempos, different moods, and I think all these genres themselves.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think you should play good music wherever that is classified as a genre. You should play it.
Yeah.
You know, it might not immediately stand out to you as being the genre that it's classified as. It might be that it's put in that genre by somebody like Beatport because it thinks it's got more chance of selling in that category.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, you know, digging into flow, is, you know, you touched a little bit on going, right, I'm going to start a party. When you decide to do your own night, it's more than just wanting to play. And it's more than just giving yourself another vehicle to be, like you said, a resident or a DJ. What is your why? What is your deep kind of... There must be a mission that you've got in your head that flow is this.
I'll be honest, I think we are still finding that out a little bit. We are still learning that, but at the same time, it's creating that experience that I witnessed for all those years on the dance floor when I was a bit younger. You know, taking people to a different place. So yeah, we don't ban phones, but what you'll find at Flow is, like your night EDC, most people are off the phones most of the night. I took a video at EDC for Instagram, but I took it at the back of the room. You know, it wasn't in the middle of the dance floor. And
Did you almost feel guilty for taking it?
I did actually, yeah, because there's a lot of people I talk to on Insta, and they're like, "Oh, we ban phones," and I'm like, I totally get that, and you know, that night sounds amazing, but I just don't want to be that policing of people. Personally, I just don't want to do that. If it gets too much, then I would do it. Obviously, you see the afterlife and all of that, and it's just a million miles away. Even though I do like some of that music, I think it's a million miles away from what it was all about, really, in the beginning.
Well, you're not just watching it, are you? And you're certainly not watching it to record it, to watch it later.
To not watch it.
To not watch it is, well put. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think, like, it sounds a little cliche, but finding your flow. Like, I wanted people to come in, especially, I wanted that mix of, like, young and old. So I never pigeonholed the night in the beginning to be like this. I think it's fine to do that because you need to market anything, as you know, got tons of experience. You need to find your market. But, and I think I have given myself a bit of a task trying to appeal to all ages, because some people are like, I don't want to see any young people on the dance floor. And then some people will go like, oh, they're a bit old for us. And there is that. And even when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, I'm not going there, they're full of oldies, you know, that kind of thing. But I do believe it's music first. So part of it is like giving DJs a chance. So, you know, I was never really given opportunities. And I think not always because I'm great and they're bad. Actually, I was a bit shit at the beginning and I wasn't good enough. And that's probably why I was getting knocked back.
And there's more supply than there is demand, right?
It's just, honestly, since starting Flow, I'm so, like, honoured. So many people send mixes. It's ridiculous. And I wish I could give everybody a chance that is, you know, fits the vibe. But you hear this all the time, but I get a lot of mixes from people who won't even make the effort to come down, you know, even for an hour. And to me, even if they really fit and I like them, they're not going to get a set, I'll be honest, because the guys who and the women who are coming early and they're making the effort to come and get to know you and chat to you, and he was like, oh, I'd love to be on a flow and all of that. And like I've said, you fit perfectly. You've done, you've built up this great reputation for yourself. I'll try and find a spot for you at some stage, And when it, like you say, it's bigger than just putting on a night, because you've got to think about lineups and how do DJs work together, what's going to work well. For example, so when I had the first one at the shooting gallery above Xerox, Christian, the owner, give a shout out to him. He's a great guy, by the way. But there were issues, there were issues with the venue in terms of we were very limited to 4 hours because he has other nights he puts on there. People like Christian, they've got to try and make their money, as underground venues, and he tries to do a lot of good for like the indie scene as well. Great guy, like I say. But we felt constrained by that a little bit. But one thing that was amazing about that night was these two guys came along, and I didn't know them, and they turned out to be Seismic. They came along and they were just loving it, and I think we might have had a little chat before on social media before they came, and so those two young lads had come, and to be fair to them both, they didn't know what was going to happen. They had no other mates coming. Just coming as two sometimes a big deal when you don't know anyone else.
Yeah.
And we just struck it off straight away, and they were making music, and I got into their music really quickly. I played one of their tracks that night, which would be classed as melodic techno, but it's got like a progressive element to it as well, and I think they know that, and they've got like almost like two kind of personas developing, themselves. And we had them as a headliner as well, and it was absolutely incredible. And to think like how young they are and their production skills, and it was just, you sort of thought like these guys are ready made, it's, how's that possible? I've been doing this how many years, and I feel like I'm only just getting somewhere now. Whereas these two guys come along and some people have just got it. They've got mountains of talent and they're amazing. And I think what I'm trying to get across here is we want to be a night is also about being tastemakers. So we want to develop a new layer of tastemakers, people who are coming making their own music. Not everyone who's a DJ needs to make their own music. Absolutely not, because the DJing speaks for itself. But if we can develop in the Northeast, we want to be mainly Northeast based, although at some stage, I have to speak to my co-partner, which I'll talk about, Mark, who's come on board with Flow. He's asked me to mention him, so I'll speak about him in a minute, so I don't leave him out.
Should have bought a cardboard cutout.
I know, yeah, so he sat next to us. Yeah, I told him about this a couple of days ago, actually, but I'd said that he'd invite me on, asked me for a while ago to come on. So, yeah, he just says, just go for it, have fun with it, which is, that's the kind of guy you want to be working with, right?
Yeah, too right.
But he's just got the passion, like what I have. But yeah, like I say, we want to give DJs opportunities, especially warm-up. The warm-up slot for us is always going to be a chance for someone new, like, oh, who are they? It'll not be like heavy, it'll be kind of housey vibes,
Surely all of this, and I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, is clearly what you've seen and learned in the other part of the music scene that you're in. Mm-hmm. Putting on new talent, when people are coming into the gig, they're just having a beer and they're getting used to the vibe and the atmosphere, and they're just going to have a quick chat with a mate they've not seen in a while. They want to see somebody, and their ears will prick up if they hear talent.
Yeah.
They're not there to see that person. They know they're not. And you giving that little hand up to those people is really important. I mean, I would echo what you said with Richard's ethos. Trouty's absolutely the same as you. Nobody will ever get a gig at ours unless they've come. Mm-hmm. How can you play somewhere you've never been? Mm-hmm. That goes back to your point about, do clubs book DJs for their sound, or do DJs go to the club because the club has got a sound? Yeah. Something's got to start that, and it's probably the promoter. You get a venue, it's a shell. Yeah. Get a DJ, put him in a venue. It doesn't mean the two things are going to work. Mm-hmm. So behind this, which is where you're headed here, is your why. Yeah. If you're elevating the scene and you're finding talent from the Northeast, what you're trying to do is create a Northeast sound. That's a great why. That's not too far away from what I'm trying to do. I'm not originally from the Northeast, but I've lived here nearly 23 years. I've never lived anywhere else that long. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of what we do in the Northeast. I'd like to think I'm a Northeasterner. So that's a bloody good why.
Absolutely. I think, like I say, I try not to be negative and talk about people in a bad way, but I do believe there's always been gatekeepers, and they can be people who run clubs. They can be people who are like radio DJs, labels, certain labels, massive labels, and they're kind of gatekeepers. And I think that line's getting blurred a bit at the moment with all social media and things. In some ways, gatekeepers are good because that gives you like credibility. In some ways, like a dream of mine is always to be played on Pete Tong.
Are you talking about them? They've earned their space and they're defending it.
So I think some have, and I think some haven't. That's my honest truth of just what I've learned. You know, I've put on, before I did Flow, I used to put on gigs for Love Music Hate Racism, you know, anti-racist values, and we were doing them for years. And I think I never made a penny out of any of that. It was just purely for the love of music and for the message. And you know, they weren't overly political, the gigs, but the tone was there, if that makes sense. So people were coming for the message, and then they were just having a good night. You know, like we did gigs at the Clooney 2, Cumberland Arms, you know, all types of different gigs. We put on a gig at the Monument one year, Gray's Monument.
Oh, nice.
I had a mate, a punk band, mates of mine, Underlying Hero, they live around here actually. They were on as one of the main acts, you know. I was like, oh, they went on and like, I was like, whatever you do, don't swear. So like, it was the whole kind of 1970s punk thing. They came on and then they
straight away,
fuck off. And then the police were like, at the end of me, were like, what did they say? And I was like, oh, look, they're just young. And I was young at the time. I was their age. So it's not like I can say, like, I'm their father figure. You know, like, they're just young. But I managed to get away with it. And yeah, we had a great time. But I think I've always loved music and wanted to know how it all works. If that makes sense. Like, how DJs put mixes together. But how it all works and like, I suppose how people make a living out of it as well has always intrigued me as well.
Yeah, the industry behind it. Because that's the reality, isn't it? Yeah, you know, people see a DJ. You should watch the Avicii documentary. Emma and I have watched both the ones that were on. There's Avicii with his laptop everywhere he walks. He's like on his laptop. He's making these tunes. I'm happy to say this because he was a genius.
Yeah.
But there was a promoter behind him.
Yeah.
There was a manager. A burning desire from this manager to crack deals, to make sure, to push him on. His talent alone would not have got him where he was. So this is where you start to think about your mission, collaboration, who's going to help you get there, and all the steps to it. Partnerships with a venue, an understanding with a venue.
Yeah.
It's all important. This is the thing, if you're a promoter, and you definitely are, if you've done all this other stuff, all of this experience you've got, it might at some stage seem like it's not related, but it is.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It doesn't matter what the music is.
Yeah.
People are people, scenes are scenes, and if you've got a burning desire to bring something to the forefront, and you've got the guts and determination to make it happen, then you will find a way. It's not easy, is it?
No, it's really not. I think, you know, I've talked about a lot of the positives and the funny sides of Flow. You've mentioned, I don't think the viewers will mind me saying this, as you've got ADHD and I think I've got ADHD. I know it's a popular thing to say at the moment, but
it's popular. But if you've got it,
it's not popular. Yeah. In your head, it's not popular anyway. But you'll know what I mean, Danny. But you don't switch off. You do try, but my brain, like, since I got involved with Flow, especially because I've got a love for it, I want, like you were saying before, I want to deliver such a good night and not let people down. You know, people are paying money to come to Flow. It's a privilege. You're in a privileged position, so you have to drop the ego. Don't get me wrong. I've got like a little bit of persona. I want to go on there and DJ. That's every DJ.
That's performance mode.
Yeah, performance mode. But I think beyond that, you're building something there. And if you're trying to deliver something for like the younger generations, and I'm trying to bring them into it. I'm trying to, like an education, like a progressive house education in some ways. You know, the younger ones come in, they want to hear that big track, but then they're like, ooh, well, what's that actually? You know, in a couple of my sets, I've not done like a really long set yet, but I did like building it up now, so I'm doing like an hour and a half each time I'm going on now, which some people say, well, that's nothing, but you know,
90 minutes is Like,
extended each time. I'm trying to extend it each time and trying to build it up longer. And I feel like the more I get into it, the better it gets. You know, the more you can tune into the audience and kind of manipulate the audience, take them on a real journey. You know, and that's, and obviously a lot of DJs say that, but that's what you want to be doing. I believe. You know, it is performance, but it goes beyond that. It's, I don't know, like when you get people into that state of flow, you know, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. And for me, getting that feedback from an audience that way is an incredible thing, you know. Yeah, so I think getting other DJs on, giving them that opportunity as well has been amazing, basically, and seeing it grow.
so your audience, if you like, and I hate to say the word marketing, but the people that you want to come, there's two different types of audience, isn't there? There is people that want to come and be seen, to be at a popular place, and then there's the musos. But really, when you're running something commercial, there needs to be a little bit of both, in a way. You've got to appeal to a larger group of people, or you've got to be very specific. If you're very specific, you're looking at smaller numbers. So how are you gravitating around those kind of theories with flow?
I think it's just trying to be a little looser with things, in the sense of, like I mentioned, you know, if we take Seismic for example, giving them the opportunity to DJ, then realizing they were bringing people, and then we could actually headline them. They had a big sound, they were fantastic. We felt they deserved a chance to go on, and that all just fit together like a jigsaw. And I think that's the way I want to kind of run it, to have a flow to the night, you know, like to have some kind of, oh, that was great, like what's the next one? And it's a bit like ADC, you know, you kind of, in some ways with ADC, you kind of know what you're getting, but you mix it up a little bit. So it's always a little bit different times, bringing Neil in for room 2. When it comes down to flow, and, you know, the obsessors who think over and over again about this sort of thing, and like, what makes my night stand out? Why are people going to come? How do you not stand on people's toes? We wanted just to bring the whole thing back down to earth. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, Manpower is a big inspiration in terms of what he's been saying at the moment. And the word community gets bandied around a lot. But one thing I love about EDC, and I've took inspiration from EDC from, is that Facebook community that you've got going, the togetherness when people are there. And I think that there's a lot of clubbing experience. And what's great about EDC is seeing, sometimes you'll see like parents and then daughters. And like father and son.
And I really like that. It's quite different. You don't find that a lot elsewhere.
Yeah. Every area is different, isn't it? And I can't say I'm an expert, to be honest, beyond the Northeast, really. All I can do is look at like kind of my area and what makes us unique, you know, and I've got to think that way when I'm thinking about flow and what flow is. And yes, it's about the music, but it goes beyond that, like you say. And I think what we're starting to see is that father-son relationship going on a little bit, generational kind of gap, coming togetherness, and people realising, okay, normally after a couple of drinks, but you'll get some bloke, 50-year-old, talking to some young lad, and they'll be talking about Sasha or Dick.
But here's the thing, right?
You know, and
here's the thing, it was like that back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, people like you mentioned earlier, punk, you know, there was a lot of people that had been into the punk movement, into counterculture, that went into rave and went into house music.
Yeah.
So they'd be at the back of the club raving. You'd get talking to them as like a 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And they'd tell you all sorts of stories. And that became part of what clubbing was amazing for.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I always say, like, yes, there's times when I can remember DJs, and I mean, maybe I'm a bit more astute because I was into DJing, but I would remember tracks. I'll tell you what I remember more than anything else. I remember the journeys to and from the clubs with my mates, and I remember the mad conversations with mad people.
Yeah.
Because that is part of clubbing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you can come up with the best music ever, unless you've got a community of people that are there for the right reasons and are bringing their own thing to the party, so to speak. They become the thing that makes the night. You put it perfectly. It is an honour.
Yeah.
It's an honour to sell tickets to something that people come to. And you just need to put on a good show.
Yeah, and especially, you know, when people are like struggling, what entertainment can I afford? You've got to think like that as a promoter. You've got to think, people are sacrificing their Saturday night to come to your event. what gives you the right? Not like I'm great, but like what gives you the right? And I think
Yeah.
if you change that mentality of like we're doing something good to like no, people are coming to see me, change that mentality and that mind shift, everything changes, you know. And
So what do you think of all these posts that we're seeing at the moment then, that have been probably for the last year, where, you know, on some occasions you're getting promoters begging people to buy tickets and almost like making people feel guilty for not buying tickets? What do you make of that? Because it's quite weird to witness, isn't it? Especially as a fellow promoter.
It's weird. So there's two areas. I think a lot of promoters are in it for the love, but there are certain people. You know, you do your research as a promoter, don't you? You go and look them up. I sometimes look people up on LinkedIn. I'm not even on LinkedIn. You know,
LinkedIn stalker, Mike.
These people are business people. They don't really give a shit about the music. You know, they want to sell tickets, and I think, you know, I heard through the grapevine that Digital paid £20,000 for. I always get our name wrong. Lens. I mean Lens.
Lens. Yeah.
And I get it, you know, it's just huge, and I really actually liked some of our early sets and stuff like that. And I don't want to diss on any one DJ. It's not about her, but it's about this thing of saying, look, £20,000, and I think I'd heard as well that they didn't actually make that much from that night. Whereas if they put on local nights, you know, which I'll give a nod to Adam, who's in Asia, you know, he is booking a headliner, and there's a lot of pressure goes with that, and it's a huge risk on their part. You know, him and his crew that are doing that. We got to know them through them coming to Flow, so it wasn't like they're booking Digital where at Hidden Heights. It was actually a coming togetherness there, you know, and I was shocked. I was just talking about it. He was asking my advice. I was like, you're asking me advice about Digital? Like, I've never even DJ'd there. And then he was like, well, do you want to? So that's how I got the gig. And there's a little plug for you. It's me my debut at
Nice.
Digital. I can't wait. So I'll get to play more of the heavier stuff of me sound and what I love to play. But I really hope the night goes ahead, if I'm honest. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because those lads have got a passion for the music. They are booking a big headliner, Mark Reeve, huge name, but Mark's also put out a lot of stuff recently, if you go and look on Facebook, about, and I think it's real, I believe him, that he's cut his fee in half. He wants to help smaller promoters, his team, because a lot of these big guys have teams now, big women as well, so their team they've worked with Asia to put that night together, and I think it's been great to learn that actually behind the scenes, and learn about where you can put on big nights and it's real, but where I think what you were touching on is like when people just do it for the money, you know, and I think you get a lot of your festivals, you know, it's the same lineups on festivals, and
it's very difficult.
You know what's boring about that for me personally, as a tastemaker, is I know what I'm going to hear when I go and listen to those DJs. I'm going to hear their latest hit, and don't get me wrong, making music and making it all happen is so difficult. Like getting releases out as a big name, getting on tour, all of it. It must be, I mean, that's another level, you know, it must be exhausting at times for them. And that's a side that people don't see. But there's also the side that says, you know, it's going to be a predictable mix. It's not going to be that entertaining. I'm not saying every DJ is like that. There's so many great DJs, Carl Cox, who can do huge arenas and still be so entertaining. But what I'm trying to say is the essence of house and techno is like in smaller venues, isn't it? And I think I think there's a nod now to start bringing that back round in a genuine way, you know. And I think we can start bringing a new generation. Yeah. We've looked at growing talent in the North East, you know, for Flow, and we've like, where can we go with Flow in terms of the genres? How far can we go on the edges of progressive house? How far can we go in terms of the edges of techno, in terms of who we book? So it's something that we're constantly figuring out, and like I say, Mark Bowen, who's finally come on board with Flow, is fantastic. Great to have him on board with it, and we'll be making decisions together from now on. It was great to be the founder, but
I couldn't imagine doing EDC on my own.
Yeah. That's not what you were saying off mic, mind.
Richard's going to be twitching. Having a partner it's a lot of things. You have somebody constantly to talk to about things that are going on. Richard is quite black and white, which is good for me because I live in the grey area. He will make a decision sometimes very quickly that I'm deliberating on, and that helps. We can bat an idea about, and we're both quite calm about not necessarily acting on that straight away. We have total confidence in each other DJing. There's never a worry. We both know we're completely different than each other, and it works. So there's lots of yin and yang, but the most important thing about being in a partnership is you're going through this with somebody else.
Yeah.
I like team sports
Mm-hmm.
where you can high five each other.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you've got a big crowd in front of you who are all enjoying it. How do you process that yourself?
Yeah.
You know, we talked about Avicii earlier.
Yeah.
How the hell, as a human, do you take in what's happening in front of you and process all of this all the time and remain normal, unless you've got something to vent it with? So how did it come about that you thought?
Again, naturally, totally naturally. So I met Mark through another guy called Paul, who I do a bit of work for. He owns a mobile disco company, and we just hit it off. Yeah, just hit it off. And Mark had wanted to put on his own night and do his own thing. Probably his style's probably a little bit more housey, away from kind of what I was doing, but I think he saw the vision that I had, you know, with Flow, and like he's got some of his own ideas he's trying to bring on board longer term. And you know what really was, Danny? I'll be honest with you, he's so passionate. It's just pure passion. He called me. He didn't take his eyes off the DJs when he came to my night, and I could just tell. You know, I mean, one of the things about ADHD is we have a lot of flaws, but we're quite good at reading people. Not in relationships, funny enough. I'll talk about your wife, but you know, in terms of my girlfriend. But like, I think when it comes to like people in general, you know, as a promoter and a DJ and having all that experience, you've got to learn how to read people a little bit. And I think anyone, even if you're shy, I think you can do it. To be honest, and you know, you can have ADHD if you're shy and stuff like that. And I think you know, you can be like that. So I think I read Mark probably in a sense of like being just a genuine guy. He's a little bit older than me. He's a bit more, you know, he knows what he likes, what he doesn't like. He goes way back as well. Loved the scene for years. He's just never really took it up properly. He was in the same boat I was, and why not give him the opportunity to come into a partnership? There's a lot of risk there in terms of taste making and big decisions financially long term, but I think
you've got to be like, this isn't a playground game. Richard and I had a long discussion today. Richard and I both started about a year and a half ago. Richard and I both took a slight change in jobs and career change, and it meant that we were both going to be starting something new and having to concentrate on it, as well as being about a year and a half into Early Doors Club. So, half a year into Early Doors Club, and we needed to be able to balance the two, right? Like, both of us were going to go and do completely different jobs. We didn't know where that was going to go. There's a 6-month probation period, so we both need to behave ourselves. And at the same time, you know, our passion is music and having a great time and like doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there are a certain amount of things that you talk about, and it's operational, it's organisational, it's maybe what tunes are you going to play, how are we going to do this. But, and here's the but, I guess because of my background, I couldn't just go ahead with no plan. So definitely at the start, I was like leading with this plan. But what was good between us both was that when we talked about core things that mattered to us as people, they were alike.
The same, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking to you earlier about the why.
Why you have to learn that.
Is because absolutely, if you're going to go ahead and do something, you need to, if you're a partnership, have either the shared passion and the shared interests and similar goals. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree on everything.
No.
And you've got to be able to tell each other that.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I've learned now to be outward and confident because I've been DJing a while and I've dealt with a lot of different people to just be upfront now, I think. It's took me a long time to get here, but I feel like I can be open with Mark and he understands that. And yeah, you know, his enthusiasm's on a different level than mine. In some ways we bounce, sometimes we don't, sometimes we connect, sometimes we don't. But ultimately, we have that like instinctual thing where it's like we both want. So, for example, we were were just like putting out ideas, a while ago, like, oh, who would we like on if we could really do it? And I said, yeah, but we've got to build up this community. You've got to build up these people who are coming back because they love it, and they want to come, and people are making friends, and young and old, and all of that side of things. Bring back that bit of hedonism in the northeast. And but at the same time, like, but what if we get too big? Like, what we're going to do? And I'm like, well, we can do it ourselves, but it would be nice. It would be nice to bring in bigger names at some stage and still keep our ethos of what we're about. And they don't always have to be from the northeast. I said earlier that everyone's from the northeast, I think, but I didn't mean that long term. I think we would like to keep it mainly northeast, but at the same time bring in bigger names at some stage. But I think we've been putting a lot of names around, and what was interesting is I've only known Mark a short time, but every name he was like, oh, great, like this name, that, you know what I mean? And we just bounced off each other really well. And it's weird, isn't it? Because I think you go on to the Beatport chart or something, you see the latest name, and 9 times out of 10, I'm not interested. Don't get me wrong. The DJ,
I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah,
I totally understand.
I mean, the DJs and the producers who run labels and stuff still have those big chart topping hits as well. You know what I mean, in terms of Beatport and stuff. But we kind of, as DJs, want to invite DJs, like, because they're DJs, and I think there's a million names I could roll off the tongue right now, but
I think one of the things that I respect about Flow, and one of the reasons for really wanting to speak to you as well, when you boil down what a few people are trying to do in our city/cities, I actually quite like the fact you're a Gateshead. I think you're. I texted you, didn't I, saying you could say you're the number 1 progressive house venue or night in Gateshead. I was being a bit cheeky, but in terms of the fact that very few people know that Gateshead is a city. Yeah. It's a city that is always overshadowed by Newcastle, and that's a shame. Yeah. We talked earlier about houses and where we've lived. I lived in Gateshead. Mm-hmm. When I lived in Newcastle, if you said that the people lived in Gateshead, you thought they had 2 heads, or they were lesser people.
Do you want to know a secret?
Well, yes. Will it be a secret if you share it with this many people, though?
Well, it still will, because we haven't announced it yet. But I'm in talks with someone to put on a rave in Gateshead, just for the fun of it.
Ace.
With an owner who owns a venue, who has just said, yeah, go on then. So it's like derelict.
Please, can I play? I'm serious.
Maybe, Danny, maybe.
Please, can I
send us a mix and I'll think about it.
I'll send you a mix. I'll send you a mix. Tell me what you want on it. I'll send you.
On before
I would love to play a rave. I mean, honestly.
I don't know if it'll happen, to be honest, but yeah.
But you've got to have these talks, right?
Yeah, someone's got the idea, and you know what it is? It's great to put something on Gateshead. We did look at other venues, I'll be honest, as the night was growing. But we haven't sold that out yet. It's a little venue and we haven't sold it out. And it was a little goal of mine to say, look, no, like we want to sell that out, and it's give a shout out to Marie, who's been working with us from the beginning, and she's great to work with. Really good, really open minded. Didn't know what it's hot. To be fair to venues and venue owners, they're taking a gamble on you as well.
Yeah, they are. It's a partnership.
Your partnership, and you've got to show them that you're somewhat sensible. Even though you're in a fun industry in a way, but I think she's been great, and it's not too expensive in there. It's quite slick. I don't want to give all my secrets away on
well, don't have to.
Yeah, but there's things I'm trying to do with Flow that just that I've learned from travel and being in festivals around the world, or little places here and there, that I want to kind of bring to Flow. So it just creates that little bit different vibe, so people come and just making it a little bit different each time as well. Little things like, there's no big secret, like we're going to add more lighting and things like that, because it's quite limited in there.
But you see, here's the thing, right? This is why you're a man after my own heart.
Yeah.
You mentioned Jeff earlier.
Yeah.
And Jeff's been in touch quite a lot. I knew Jeff many years ago, actually, before he became Manpower. Mm-hmm. Not very well, but enough to talk to. And we messaged each other, and he's wanted to try and come to EDC because he recognises that we're trying to run a residence-run night in terms of,
which is difficult.
Yeah, and not having headliners and not having DJs, but similar to you, bringing through grassroots people who've been to do warm-ups, lift other people up, but try and run it as a residence programme. Now we're on a mission to not to prove, but we're on a mission to do what we're doing, because it isn't about similar to you, it's not about bringing things that we haven't already got in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it. Richard and I recognise that what we've got here is good enough. Shindig was amazing.
Absolutely. And Danny, I just interrupt you there. Like, I have to say, and I'm not brown nosing, but I get a lot of inspiration from your Shindig days with Rico, you know, and all of that. It was a real inspiration to me. You know, some of those early Shindig gigs, you know, that we went to and stuff. Lives in the memory, doesn't it? And I think you still deliver that. You know, it might be. You know, what's great about EDC is it still delivers that vibe. You know, and sometimes you hear a track and you think, I wasn't expecting to play that here. Like, how can they do that? That's just a normal house tune that they would play elsewhere. But there's always a little spin on it. It's played faster, or it's played with reverb on, or it's something.
Yeah.
You've done something, or Rico's done one of his little skills that he does. He doesn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And you know, you've kept that tradition alive, basically. And I think what you've done is you were in first. And I think what I was going to ask you is, how are you going to deal with? I think you were going to ask me something, so I'll ask you it. But how are you going to deal with the future of like daytime parties? Because we're starting to see a lot more of those. Digital are starting to put them on. You know, and how are you going to? You're already different, but how are you going to deal with all that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. I think one way is the more the merrier, right? The more things that are available for people to do, the more noise is made. So when Vicky McClure, she's a TV star, and her husband is leader of a band. His band goes on tour, they work out her popularity, they come up with an idea, big enough venues, big enough noise, put on a daytime party. The idea that we had was never our idea. Annie Nightingale started it.
Yeah.
Did it for a while, stopped. Here's the thing. When you're already famous, a famous person, you've got the amplifier. So what you're putting on can amplify to many people.
Yeah.
But if it is mainstream, commercial, and you need to get 2,000, 3,000 people into a venue, then it needs to be mainstream. So what do you do if you're not mainstream? Where the hell are these people? Where did everybody go to that used to go to Shindig?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why is underground music nowhere? Why, if it is underground, is it only cool and you don't know about it unless it's trendy? So how do you kind of come across this and change it? So going back to your question, it's not so much that you're competing with everybody else. What you're trying to do is recognise that what you're trying to do has to exist in today's culture. The core of people that were into rave, house and a certain scene are a certain age. You said it earlier, some people come with their kids. How does anything keep on existing as a culture beyond the people who started it? So when a generation die, the music before either dies with them, but very rarely it doesn't, right? I'll take a completely different take on this. Michael Bublé.
Yeah.
Michael Bublé is younger than me, was obsessed with that era of music, and has probably made it more popular in terms of sales of records today than it was back then. He would not have liked that style of music had he not been given it or shown it by somebody.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to put a night on, and my ethos is that when I grew up, you went to a night not expecting somebody to play something. You were open to hearing whatever was going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back in that day, that was a house tune next to a techno tune, next to however that DJ could mix it.
Yeah.
To your earlier point about going on a journey, if you totally let go and let a good DJ play anything, you went all over the place. That's all me and Richard want to do. Is play as many good bits of music together that evoke different emotions.
Yeah, and I think there's different ways of doing that, isn't there? You know, there's ways where you can play sets that are totally modern, but have got like that nostalgia in them. There's ways where you can play like a couple of drawbacks to the 90s or whatever, and I know you did that ADC a little bit. you played a track I'd never heard before actually, and everyone was going wild on Facebook after. I can't remember the track off the top of my name off the top of my head, but it shows you that you're always learning, I think, isn't it? And I think if you're really into this, then you never stop learning. I think that's you're not like we're not like I would hate anyone to say, "Oh, you're a gatekeeper." I never want to be that guy, you know. Like I don't care how big Flow gets. I mean, there's plans to do a lot more with Flow long term, but I never want to be that person. I always want to be someone people can relate to. Like I'm very inspired by like Joe Strummer's attitude, for example, in life. You know the way he saw things and just being that kind of person of people can relate to and being down to earth. And just trying to get away from that ego kind of thing, you know.
Yeah,
And I think you have always done that.
Yeah,
Although I probably thought you did have an ego back then, but you didn't. You know.
I don't think it's about. I honestly don't. You know, if you go back to certain eras, especially with DJing, the DJ booth was out the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The dance floor was massive. Like the
Mhm.
Hacienda, for example, used to have a DJ booth that was at
yeah.
the top. That was quite cool.
Yeah.
But many DJ booths were out the way, hidden.
Mhm.
You didn't see the DJ, you heard the music.
Yeah.
The other thing is, people didn't face the DJs.
They didn't know.
They didn't face the DJs until probably around the era where Oakenfold was in the courtyard and you all faced this massive stage.
Mhm.
Because the layout of clubs, and by the way, they weren't purpose-built clubs, they were always like an old warehouse. You were all facing each other. So my upbringing of clubbing is looking at other clubbers' reaction to a tune,
Mhm.
not looking at a DJ whose reaction to the tune, he knows what he's going to play.
Yeah,
he knows when the break is.
Absolutely.
Now,
yeah.
I quite like to perform when I'm DJing because I'm bloody excited,
Yeah.
full of energy, full of
Absolutely.
ADHD, mega energy. So I'm absolutely buzzing when I'm playing. But I want the crowd to be the most important thing. Like the music, the energy. We've not even talked about energy, which is what the whole of house music is about. Energy, building it, taking it away, layering it, softening it, creating a moment of space where people don't leave the dance floor. They just stay there and have a little moment to some breakbeat.
Well,
that's the ethos Richard and I've got.
It's and I think in a way like I'm starting to feel that with Flow. Like I say, I've kind of wanted to put the music on and put the music center stage, but in our today's culture, there's going to be of that lucky thing, you know, people looking at you a little bit, and sometimes I get a little bit uncomfortable with that. But at the same time, I think it's just part of it, isn't it? And I think I put the mix up on SoundCloud actually, and I recorded it, but I did an hour and a half, but it only recorded an hour. So but I still put it out there, and I put a little voice note at the start, just telling people and thanking them for coming, because the last Flow that when I went on was the best gig I've ever had in my life. Yeah, it was an incredible atmosphere, and I urge people to go and listen to that mix. It's probably technically not the most perfect mix in the world, but I think the energy you could probably sometimes you can feel the energy from a mix, can't you? And and I think like I felt sorry for Seismic going on after, because I what you want about sometimes, you know, some people plan mixes, some people don't, and I'm somewhere in the middle. But where I'm going now is with it, is I get more confidence with the night, especially with Flow, is just having like a load of tunes that work together in a playlist, separate playlists, and then kind of going with the flow, for want of a better term. And sometimes, so I had two ways I was going to go, because they were headliners. I wanted to set them up, and that's another thing we haven't touched on.
That's right.
Another thing we haven't touched on. I think sometimes is that in today's culture, there's a lot of talk. Modern DJs say like, "Oh, well, you didn't set us up, you didn't do that, you didn't do this," and I think that's a difficult balance nowadays, especially if you're booked, you know, and you're paid 10 grand to come and deliver your sound. It's very hard to set the next guy up, especially on festival lineups and stuff. But in terms of small clubs, it's a totally different experience. And I think my set, it was just the energy in the room. And sometimes you have to respond, and the energy was there. It was lifting, And so I went down that harder road, you know, and I played. I don't normally play many retro tracks going back. I very rarely play anything that's trancey, just because of that whole stigma of melodic techno's trance and all that. But you know what it was? Like, I played it because I felt it was right at that time, and I played like a Delirium remix, and it's in that mix actually. And the energy was absolutely unbelievable. And I nearly come off at the end, and I turned to Seisman and I went, "Look, I'm so fucking sorry. Like, I did not mean to do that, you know." And what they'd asked me beforehand, which is rare nowadays, is they asked me to bring it down actually before they went on. And I know some people are like, "Oh, you can't do that," and people like the flow of a total mix, but I don't want the flow to be the same. I want us to like just break the rules a little bit. And I just says, "Oh, like, that's absolutely fine because you're the headliners anyway." So it worked because I'd created that much energy in the room. I brought it down and they went on. The problem is it was very hard for them to build that back up again.
Yeah.
But I think they enjoyed it. And the thing is about they were different because they were playing, like I say, their production skills are next level, and they played some of their tracks that you would think like, that's incredible what you're doing here. Like I think they played like 5 or 6 new tracks, and they'd made those tracks like just in a month or something.
It's incredible, isn't it, when people are like
naturally,
making it as well.
Naturally skilled like that, and the maybe it wasn't like a professional master on the track or whatever, but it was just amazing the way they'd done it. And like, it's not always about the most polished looking thing, is it? It's about experience, and I think they carried that through. And like I say, they had an amazing headline set as well. And it just felt at that moment, that one and the one before, Emma Vibes, Emma Harps now, again, a DJ had contacted because she does commercial stuff as well. And I don't want to be one of those guys who just books people because of this. There's a lot of DJs just trying to do it for a living, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think I'd approached Emma because I heard one of her releases, and it was a lot more underground. Heard a lot about her on TikTok and stuff, and
she's a grafter.
She's a grafter. But then, Danny, she's got an underground sound. She's got an underground sound.
She's bloody great. Like, I've got loads of time for Emma Vibes.
Yeah. And I think she's a breath of fresh air, and she's got a lot of charisma as well. And she came on, and that was another highlight for Flo, I think, is that, because it was just like, it was kind of like a be there moment, like, oh, I was glad I was at that one, like, you have different moments, different nights, don't you? I think, oh, I was kind of glad I was at that one, and I got to kind of warm up for her, so it was brilliant.
So, like me, you will experience the real highs of some of this stuff that we're doing, or the people that are full of energy, the crowds. There are lows, and they don't always come when you expect them. They don't always come neatly. How do you balance all this energy, effort, and forward motion with the day-to-day and problems of real life?
Yeah, I think it's a big question, isn't it? It is hard to answer that in one I suppose, one summing up. It's a complex thing, and you'll go through it as well. There are like lows, and I think at the moment Flow is grew. Every gig we've put on, numbers are growing. That's not a lie, slowly growing as well, not massively. I do a lot of DJing beyond Flow. Sometimes I get in, late at night, 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes later. Your brain does not switch off. Your brain does not switch off, and you sat there, and your alcohol normally is the way to relax that. And I've had any issues in the past with certain things, and I think for me it's a case of understanding why I got into this in the first place, and realizing that when my mental health was bad a few years ago, and I was in a really dark place with my life, personal reasons going on, and I didn't feel like I had much to go on for. That was it had got that bad, and I've never spoke about it openly. It was actually, I know it sounds really bizarre, but like, I had a moment where I was just like, what am I gonna fucking live for now? Or what's gonna be my drive now if I'm gonna carry on, and I think, like, for me it was to take the DJ thing serious, to say like, I love this, and I'm gonna now take this serious and try and make something out of it, you know, and do something beautiful out of it. And I think when you live your life for something that you love, things change quickly. They do. The things do change quickly. And like I say, I think dealing with the offsides of what we do and the downs of what we do, the highs are so high that it's worth it. You know, it is worth it. And I think it's a weird thing, you know, and if, you know, I mean, Flow has, I don't want to talk about exact amounts, but we have started to make a little bit of money. You know, has started to become a little bit profitable. So there is that kind of, is it possible? You know, like it raises those questions in your head. But in a way, it was never about that. It was never about that. And I think you have to have a good base and foundation. And I think that I have a really good family, and really proud of the family I have, you know, and that's my counterbalance and balance to life really is I have that, you know, and I have that escape.
Yeah, good.
And that, you know, like I don't obviously we didn't come here to talk about our partners as per se, but my partner's very different to me, and we bounce off each other, and she knows me quite well, so she's there basically, and that's it, isn't it? You know.
You know, it's very easy on these podcasts to talk about all the exciting bits, and it is, and we're not in it for boredom.
Yeah.
we're in it for the whole reason that we were encapsulated by it in the first place, either by that, you know, the music has cast a spell on you, a DJ has shown you that life can be different, a group of friends on the dance floor have given you a night that you'll never forget, or nights that you've never forgotten. And there's definitely an element at which a lot of people that are into the style of music were into. Once the gig's over, once the excitement dies down and the adrenaline goes, what are you kind of left with? And, you know, some people sort of feel a bit disgruntled and get back up on a Monday morning and go back to work. And then others, and I was one of these people, could not come down, could literally not come down, and then would come down so low that life was pretty unbearable. For a huge amount of my life, I was involved in nightclubs, bars, restaurants. So my social life and my professional life were totally intermingled. So I definitely relied on alcohol as a crux massively. You know, I'd get a Tuesday night off, and that was my Saturday night because I worked Saturday nights. So for a huge part of my life, I didn't ever notice that my mental health wasn't great because I either put it down to being tired, hungover, or coming down. When you get older and those layers disappear, some of those things you still love and some of those things you don't. And music was always something that I found kind of like sanctuary in. The ability to put on some music and just be somewhere else, whether that was high or low or just balancing out in the middle. And what happened for me was I suffered a personal family tragedy, and I decided to put all my efforts into physical extreme exercise. But the irony is, all of that extreme painful exercise was accompanied by making music that I could train to, run to, or cycle to. So the two things were never apart. And when I finally got to an age where I sort of felt like I couldn't really do the level of exercise that I wanted to, or didn't really have emotional pain enough to drive me on to want to do it, I came back to music. But something in me just can't go in the garage and mix it. Something in me can't just go for a walk and listen to the mix. I had to do something more with it. And yet, all the other things in your life that are going on in your mental health are still happening. So it's like you say, either you get serious about the music or you put it in a box. But I didn't feel like I had anything else that I knew as well as I did music. I had to do something more. I had this, whether it was a creative energy or a anxious energy to sort of share and come out with this stuff. And that's actually how Progressive House was born. Yeah. It was born by going, I need to create a community of people that like this. And you know, at the time I sort of, you know, similar to some of the stuff we've touched on, there was lots of Facebook groups talking about the music I liked, so I was seeing what they were doing, I was joining different clubs, seeing what people were saying. They were a bit hung up on the same stuff. And I just thought, oh, I've got all this like memories, I've got all this experience, I've got all these CDs. How can I share this with people? So for a long time, it became a real focus that all my mental strength went on. But then it went the other way. Like you said, couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Couldn't actually switch off. So to do something with something you love so much, you have to be careful. Like anything, too much of anything is a bad thing. And too little of something doesn't give you enough.
Yeah. I think for me, I've always been creative. So you touched on that a little bit. And from a very early age, I was, I had severe dyslexia and struggled throughout primary and secondary school, apart from art, basically. Went on, and then, I don't want to tell my life story, but went on to take up animation and stuff like that, and didn't really have the passion or drive for it, and was kind of searching around really for some creative endeavour, I suppose. But music had always been there, and I think that's kind of why I kind of took it up later in life. Some people get into it early, don't they? And I think for me, it was probably more confidence than anything of why I didn't, but just never thought I could be that guy. And the whole vinyl thing did look like really hard from that point of view. When things went digital, it did seem a bit more accessible, I'll be honest, and then the controller thing did help as well. So I suppose that all helped when I think back. But ultimately, I think for creative people, they've got to have something to have a project or have something, and especially if you mentioned a couple of times the ADHD thing, having something to gravitate towards is really important, isn't it? And I think you talk about like other areas of life, not being able to connect to other parts of your life, and I think that's something that comes from my political background, which is, a lot of part of our lives are quite alien and alienating, whereas I think music at its peak is very like the most togetherness you can feel, in my opinion. And I feel music in a way which words can't really describe. Don't get me wrong, there is the odd film which like touches a nerve, but personally for me, music brings out something different in me. So I suppose that's where it comes from, that wanting to understand. Wanting to understand, and
it's a universal language, isn't it, right?
Yeah, and sort of just be creative, just the art, just being an artist of such, and wanting to be part of something. And it finally, after a long time, feels like I am part of something, so it's a bit, it's nice to be invited on here. It's nice to be accepted.
Well, listen, I mean, we're sort of drawing to a natural close here, which hasn't been orchestrated. I think this is what happens when you have a nice long conversation with somebody, and we already had a shared passion for music, but we're obviously both trying to run something and do something about that passion that extends beyond something just for you. I have quite a busy life, and I'm very lucky and grateful for the life I have. And I think one of the things that I've tried to do with Early Doors Club is focus all my attention on it. I've not taken a different DJ gig since doing Early Doors Club because I want to represent everything I do at that venue. And that's probably made me a little bit insular as well, and have not gone to as many gigs because I've probably focused on the marketing or like setting things up, and then not felt the urge to go. But I'd really like to come to one of your nights, and certainly this is the whole point of a podcast like this, is that people, when they get to hear the people behind it and the story behind it, they start to understand why this night exists, that it's not just another night, that the ethos behind it is genuine and that it comes from a really good place. And, similar to the way Jeff talks on his social media, Manpower, he's really taken that kind of political edge, that local sort of, that local dynamite of taking something like a social club and reinventing it, but also bringing top talent to the Northeast, as well as him being top talent. Whatever any of us are doing in this realm, it isn't competition. It's only a positive thing that more people can go to nights where they can be themselves, hear something different, dance or not dance, be on their own or be with a crowd. Yeah, I understand exactly what you've said tonight, is that creative people need somewhere to go. And it doesn't have to be money making. It doesn't have to be, look at me, I'm here. That's the underground ethos, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think we've hit the nail on the head about what we're all trying to do here is bring it back to its roots, essentially. Bring it back to how it was meant to be. And that doesn't really matter how you do it, I don't think, and necessarily. And yeah, it's great if you can make money out of it, but it's not everything.
No.
You know, it's not everything. And I think art goes past that, doesn't it? Art is something on its own. And I think even bloody the most philosophical people who ever lived have struggled to explain art.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the artist's brain, you see. So the artist's brain works in a different way to how most people think, and that's no disrespect, because I certainly couldn't be a bloody heart surgeon, you know what I'm saying? And they think differently to me. And some of them can paint as well, but you know, so they put me to shame, really. So they probably can DJ as well. I mean, was it Stephen? He was a famous snooker player who can DJ. I'm just like, oh, come on, that's not fair. He's got two amazing talents. You know, it's not fair when two people have got two, is it? But no, it's a good thing, isn't it? But yeah, I think going forward, I'd love you to come to Flow.
When's your next gig? Tell us all. When's your next gig? What's happening?
So yeah, 28th of June is the next one. It's a Saturday. It's running slightly earlier. Still going up to midnight. That was purely for financial reasons, I'll be honest. Wasn't trying to compete with other people on that, but yeah, I think we get a good blend. And the headliner hasn't been announced. It's a little bit of a surprise. It's someone everyone's going to know. You will know the name. It's someone who's going back to his roots and diving back into what it was all about, but keeping it modern. You know, keeping it fresh. Maybe the odd, old classic in there. Who knows? It's up to him, really, isn't it? It's not up to me. That's the way we like to run things.
Yeah.
And then we've got one on the 11th of October. So we're starting to go two at a time, and then learn from people like yourself to go further than that. But it's all about risk management and people coming along, basically. And we want people to come. You'll be accepted, you'll be welcomed. There's no egos. Maybe there's one or two.
Where can we find you? Where are you online? Give us some of your places we can find you.
So Facebook, we're on Facebook. We're slowly growing on Facebook.
And it's just what, Flow?
Flow or flow.ncl. What's for Newcastle. Early birds have sold out for the next one.
Great.
I'm not just saying this, but they are flying out at the moment.
Good.
It does feel like things have picked up since last year, I'll be honest, on all of the nights I'm looking at. Ticket sales seem really good, and I think people do want to get out there, and it's June, it's the summer, and it's before the summer holidays as well, so it's perfect time to get out there, isn't it, really? So that's kind of like where we're at with Flow, really. In terms of next year and all of that, we haven't really put much thought into it. I think we are literally going with the flow.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you've got a great name, and if you can always say that you're going with the flow with things.
I know. I think I'm quite proud of the name. It was thanks to my designer, Anthony Hamilton, for that, by the way. He helped me with the name. It was sort of Flow, but he helped me with the name, so I got someone in to help me a little bit with that.
I tell you what, right? There's two things we haven't covered. One is my favourite new question for everybody, but first, you didn't explain where Naughty Bear came from.
I know, the Naughty Bear thing. Yeah, people. I think a lot of people don't follow me because it's a weird name. I honestly believe that. So you need all followers, right? I know it's weird, but an ex-girlfriend, we were just joking about names and you'd be funny, that would be funny, this would be funny. We're just putting random names together. Nights out partying, and then the name just came about. I'm not actually gay, just for the record. But it's got gay connotations apparently, which is absolutely fine.
If you've got the passion that you have for music, it doesn't matter
what
sexual orientation.
Yeah, well, thanks, Danny. And like I say, people are very welcome to come to Flow. I'm proud to say we've got a lot of women coming to Flow where they can feel safe. Trans people, non-binary people, whoever they are, they can come to Flow. They'll not be judged.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
It's a space for everybody.
Yeah, good. So here's my killer question that I asked Dee, who's more of a musician, slightly different podcast the last time, but this question for you is back to the kind of root. One of my best mates, Barry, said that you could have asked this question to everybody that's on your podcast. So I've said, yeah, it's a great idea. It's what would be your ideal rave? No budget constraints. It could be 1 million people, it could be 100, it could be whoever. What would it be? How would you have it?
You know, it's not easy to answer that actually, because like you can ponder all day, can't you? But like, I think some of the shindig raves in the warehouse, along the quayside, they were incredible personally for me, and like they were amazing. So I think something warehousey for me personally, something a bit dirty. Everyone's in it together. It gets a bit sweaty. It just in being in the moment, you know, trying to keep off your phone as much as possible. I honestly advocate for that big style, and lineups are really difficult as well. Yeah, like I've seen a lot of the people I want to see, so I'll probably invite some of those DJs on, and probably Sasha would be one of them. Yeah, probably.
Would you play? Would you be there? Would you be in it?
Probably early, but then I would go on the drink afterwards. You know what I mean? Like do a warm up set and just like leave before the big man goes on and stuff like that. But,
so you don't cock it up yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think I don't know. Like there's so many. I quite like. I know some people don't, but I quite like some of the drum code releases, the early releases as well, and that sound. You know, I think Adam.
So you'd have a real mixed bag, would you?
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would really.
It's your rave.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, I would take people on a journey through the night. You know, and so it's DJ. They would take you on their own journey, but then it would be like put together. But yeah, I think something like that, and then probably someone just eclectic to end it off a warm up. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but someone who you think, oh, that's a bit random.
Where would it be?
Gateshead.
I love it.
You know what I'm gonna do? Like I'm gonna pinch Jeff's idea. Actually, I'm just gonna get a social club.
Saltwell Social Club.
License, yeah. I'm just gonna put it on in Saltwell Social Club or something. You know.
I tell you what, if you
the People's Theatre.
If you can,
the People's Theatre.
If you can get Sasha at Saltwell Social Club.
Saltwell Park. Saltwell Park, how good would that be? Saltwell Park.
Well, it would be. It's on a steep hill. You'd have to have a good staging. Oh dear. Oh, brilliant. I love these chats because they're just a joy to be able to sit with somebody else who's into what you're into and have a couple of hours chatting away. You don't always know the person that well, and that sometimes is just as much fun. So thanks so much for coming on. You know, I will get myself to one of your gigs. Please, listeners in the North East, do come to a Flow gig. You know, support all the local nights that are on. We've got some amazing stuff happening in the North East and in the north of England, which is where clubbing was always kind of revered and well known. But Flow's at Gateshead. It's at Hidden Heights.
Yeah, Hidden Heights
Studio.
Under the arches, yeah.
And the date is again
28th of June.
28th of June.
Yeah.
New headliner to be announced.
Yeah.
Who else is on?
Mark Bone, who I mentioned, is on. Emma Harps is back on as well.
Brilliant.
And then Ian Corley, who's going to be warming it up with some house vibes as well.
Great.
So be a great night. And you know, all those DJs have said they would come back regardless. So I think that tells you a lot, doesn't it, about what we're doing here, you know. Yeah. But thanks very much for having me on, Danny. It's been really nice to be invited on. And yeah,
Mike, aka Naughty Bear, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. So we'll speak soon. Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks, Danny.